They ridiculed her tattoo. Until the SEAL commander revealed the truth behind the unauthorized deck, Insignia. The summer heat in San Diego is the kind that sneaks up on you. It doesn't announce itself. One minute you're fine, and the next minute your shirt is sticking to your back and you're doing anything just to get some air. That's why, on that particular July morning, Maya finally rolled up her sleeves. She had kept them down for nearly 2 years. Through the cold months, through the fog mornings, through the blazing afternoons out on the pier. Long sleeves, every single day. Some of the other workers had noticed it and made small jokes about it. Nothing mean, just the harmless kind of teasing that happens when people spend too much time together in a small space. Maya always smiled and moved on. But that Tuesday, the heat won. She pushed her sleeves up to her elbows, grabbed her tools and got back to work on the engine she'd been rebuilding since 7 in the morning. Nobody thought anything of it at first. Maya had been a civilian mechanic at the naval facility for almost 3 years. She was quiet, she was skilled, and she showed up on time. Her supervisors liked her because she never complained and never left a job half done. The sailors and officers who worked alongside her respected her the way people respect anyone who is genuinely good at what they do. She wasn't loud. She didn't try to impress anyone. She just worked. That morning, she was working on one of the patrol crafts that had come in the night before. It needed a full engine check. Something had been making a rough sound on the last run, and the crew chief wanted it sorted before the next deployment cycle. Maya had been at it for 2 hours already, her hands dirty, her mind focused, when the group of sailors walked past on their way to the loading dock. One of them stopped. His name was Petty Officer Ryan. Young, maybe 25, confident the way young men in uniform sometimes get when they've been doing the job long enough to feel sure of themselves, but not quite long enough to know everything. He saw the tattoo on Maya's forearm, and he stopped walking. The tattoo was a trident and anchor crest, not a generic one, not something you'd find in a book or copy off the internet. It was a very specific design, the kind used by naval special warfare units, the kind of insignia that meant something very particular inside that world. Ryan stared at it for a second, then he laughed. "Where'd you get that?" he called out. The question wasn't friendly. It had an edge to it. "You buy that off somebody?" Maya didn't look up from her work. She kept her hand on the wrench and just said, "It's mine." That answer didn't satisfy him. It never does, with people like that. He said something to the sailors beside him, something low that Maya didn't quite catch, and they laughed too. More people gathered the way people always do when something interesting seems to be happening. By the time Maya finally put down her wrench and looked up, there were maybe 8 people standing nearby, some watching, some pretending not to. "That's a SEAL team insignia," Ryan said, louder now. "You know that's not something civilians just put on their body, right? That's not a souvenir." Maya looked at him. Her face was completely calm, not the calm of someone who doesn't care, the calm of someone who has decided, a long time ago, that certain battles aren't worth having with certain people. She rolled her sleeve back down, picked up her wrench, and went back to work. If she had hoped that would be the end of it, she was wrong. 5th. By 11 o'clock that morning, a formal complaint had been filed with base administration. The paperwork described the situation briefly. A civilian contractor was displaying military insignia associated with naval special warfare units. The insignia appeared to be unauthorized, and the matter required review. Lieutenant Anna Garza was the one assigned to look into it. She was a personnel officer. Calm, organized, fair. She had handled dozens of these kinds of small disputes over the years. A misunderstanding about uniform policy here, a contractor with an expired badge there. They were never complicated. She expected this one to be the same. She called Maya into her office just after lunch. Maya sat across from her at the small table and answered every question plainly. Her name, her contractor ID, her length of service at the facility. Yes, she had a tattoo on her left forearm. Yes, it was a naval insignia. No, she was not active-duty military. No, she had never served. Then Garza asked the question that mattered. "Can you tell me where the tattoo came from and what it means to you?" For the first time in the conversation, Maya was quiet for a moment. She looked at the small window on the far wall. Outside, you could hear the sound of the water and the distant clank of equipment on the pier. Then she said, "It belongs to me. That's all I want to say." Garza nodded slowly. She wrote something down. She told Maya the review would take about 24 hours, and that, Until then, Maya should stay off the main pier. Maya agreed, stood up, and left without another word. Garza sat in her office for a few minutes after Maya walked out. Something about the conversation had left her with an uncomfortable feeling she couldn't quite name. The woman hadn't been defensive. She hadn't been nervous. She had been, what was the word? Careful. Like someone protecting something fragile. Garza opened Maya's full personnel file on her computer. Most of it was exactly what she expected. Employment history, clearance documents, performance reviews, all clean, all positive. But near the bottom, there was a flag on the file. A small notation she almost missed. It was a cross-reference to a military NOK notification, next of kin. Garza clicked it. The record that opened was for a petty officer first class named James Chen, Naval Special Warfare, SEAL Team. He had been killed in action during a classified operation 4 years ago. He was 27 years old. The next of kin listed on his file was his sister, Maya Chen. Garza sat very still for a moment. She scrolled down to the section on posthumous commendations. There was a formal citation there, signed by the commanding officer of James's team. The signature at the bottom was from a Commander David Reyes. She reached for her phone. Out in the parking lot, Maya was sitting in the front seat of her truck with the windows down. She wasn't on her phone. She wasn't listening to music. She was just sitting. Her left arm rested on the doorframe, sleeve down. Under it, the tattoo. She knew every line of it by memory. She'd had it done 4 years ago, 3 weeks after the funeral, at a small shop about 20 minutes from her house. She had brought in a photograph to show the artist. A photograph of a sketch on a piece of notebook paper, in James's handwriting, that he had drawn during his last leave home. He had shown it to her at the kitchen table, in the house where they grew up. He'd been explaining what it meant, the trident, the anchor, the small details that made the design specific to his team. He'd been proud of it in the quiet way he was proud of most things, not loud about it, just steady. We all drew our own version, he had told her. Kind of a tradition. Everyone on the team puts their own small thing in it. She had kept the sketch, and when he didn't come home, she had put it on her body, in his handwriting, so that she would carry it the same way he had. Just quietly, without making a show of it. She had never explained this to anyone, not her co-workers, not her neighbors, not the well-meaning people who had said things to her at the memorial service. The tattoo wasn't for anyone else. It was between her and James. She traced it through the fabric of her sleeve with one finger. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number, she answered. Maya. A man's voice. Low, calm, older. This is Commander Reyes. I heard what happened this morning. I'm already at the facility. I need you to stay where you are. I'm coming to you. She didn't say anything for a second. Then, okay. This. Nobody had called Commander David Reyes. He had heard about it by accident. A brief mention on a radio channel he was monitoring while driving to another appointment on the base. Just a few words. A civilian contractor. A SEAL insignia. A complaint. He had pulled over, made a single phone call to confirm what he thought he'd heard, and then turned the car around. He walked onto the main pier in his service uniform and found the group that included Petty Officer Ryan. They stood up a little straighter when they saw his rank. Ryan, to his credit, didn't try to disappear. Reyes stopped a few feet away from them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The tattoo on that woman's arm, he said, was designed by Petty Officer First Class James Chen. He was one of my men. He drew it himself for his team during our last deployment together. He paused. He was killed in action 4 years ago. That woman is his sister. She carries that design because he gave it to her. I know this because she asked my permission before she had it done, and I told her she had every right. The pier was very quiet. Ryan looked at the ground. Then he looked up. We didn't know, sir, he said. His voice was completely different now. Smaller. We didn't know anything about it. Reyes looked at him for a moment. No, he said. You didn't. He left them there and walked to the parking lot. The Tamaya was still in her truck when he found her. She saw him coming and got out. They stood in the afternoon heat a few feet apart. They hadn't been in the same place since James's memorial service 4 years ago. Back then, Reyes had shaken her hand and said the things commanding officers say at those moments, things that were sincere, but also necessary and formal. She had nodded and thanked him and moved through the day the way you do when you're running on nothing. This was different. He told her that the complaint had been dropped, that Lieutenant Garza's report would reflect a simple misunderstanding, that her job was not in any danger, and her clearance was fine. Maya nodded. "Thank you," she said. Reyes looked out toward the water for a moment. He seemed to be deciding something. Then he said, "I want to tell you something about the day James died, something I've never put in a report." Maya turned to look at him. "About an hour before we went out," Reyes said, "he found a broken radio antenna on the boat and fixed it with a piece of wire from his own boot. Nobody asked him to, nobody even noticed it was broken. But he noticed, and he fixed it, and then he made a joke about it. Something about how the Navy should be paying him extra for electrical work." He stopped. The whole team laughed. It was a good moment. I've thought about it a lot. Maya didn't say anything for a while. The noise of the pier carried over to them, the machinery, the water, the distant voices. She was looking at something far away. Then she said, "That sounds exactly like him." Reyes nodded. "He used to fix things around our house the same way," she said. "With whatever was nearby, my mom used to say he could repair anything except a broken conversation." A small sound escaped her, something between a laugh and something else. Reyes smiled for the first time. "Just briefly. He talked about you," Reyes said. "More than you probably know." Maya looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment, standing in a parking lot on a hot Tuesday afternoon, it was like something heavy that had been pressing on her chest for 4 years, shifted, just slightly, to a different position. Not gone, it doesn't go, but moved. She thanked him again. He straightened his uniform, gave her a nod that carried more in it than most conversations, and walked back toward the facility. Maya stood there for another minute. Then she got in her truck and drove home. She didn't roll her sleeves down. Back on the pier, Petty Officer Ryan found Lieutenant Garza before the end of the day and asked for 5 minutes of her time. He went on record with a formal apology, not because anyone required it, but because he wanted it documented. Garza accepted it on Maya's behalf and noted it in the file. The next morning, Maya came back to work. She finished the engine job on the patrol craft. Nobody said anything about the tattoo. A few weeks later, one of the younger sailors, a woman named Park, who had been standing on the edge of the crowd that morning and had heard everything Reyes said, stopped Maya during a break and asked, quietly, if her brother had been on the East Coast teams or the West Coast teams. Maya told her. Park nodded and said, "My uncle served with that unit. Different year, but same unit." She paused. "Thank you for carrying it." Maya looked at her for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you for saying that." And that was all. No speeches, no ceremony. Just two people, standing in the heat, understanding something about each other that didn't need more words than that. The tattoo on Maya's arm said nothing. It never had to. It just stayed there, exactly where it had always been. Quiet, specific, and completely real.